We're going to review just a little bit. Turn to Revelation 13, verse 16. Revelation 13, verse 16. Says he causes who? All, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive what? A mark. And we understand this mark to be called what? The mark of the beast, yeah. Okay, just make sure we got the right mark in mind. Is it a good thing or a bad thing to receive the mark of the beast? Bad thing. What happens to you if you receive the mark of the beast?
7 last plagues.
The 7 last plagues are poured out on you. And you basically seal your eternal destiny for the negative by doing that. And so that's kind of the stage. This mark is going to be forced on us. And one of the measures that they're going to do, very typical of what the U.S. does right now when we don't like somebody. What's one of the first things we do to them? Economic sanctions, right? He causes everyone to receive a mark. Verse 17, and no one may buy or sell except those who have the mark. It's paraphrasing just a little bit there. Let's look at a couple quotations in review here. Looking for Country Living, page 9 and 10. Country Living, page 9 and 10. It's quotation number 43 on the quote sheet. Those of you who have a booklet, it's in there too. It says, again and again, the Lord has instructed that our people are to take their families where? Away from the cities into the country where they can do what? Raise their own provisions. Why? For in the future, the problem of buying and selling will be a very serious one. Okay, this problem connected with the mark of the beast, not being able to buy or sell, is going to be a very serious one. And so in the same way that Noah moved with godly fear as he prepared the ark, I think we need to move with godly fear and take this very seriously. And so we're going to talk about that a bit more this morning. Let's look at one other quote. It's number 53 in the quote sheet.
What is it in the booklet?
Fundamentals of Christian Education, page 325. Should be about 10 quotes down from the one we last read.
Number 36.
36, thank you. We're supposed to get out in the country where we can do what again? Raise our own provisions. And as somebody pointed out, provisions, it means more than just food. And so this quote here, Fundamentals of Christian Education, page 325, says, the people should learn as far as possible to depend on products that they can obtain from where? The soil. Okay, that goes together with raising our own provisions. But here it talks in broad language also. It's just products that we can obtain from the soil. And if you remember yesterday, we pointed out that this says, this is talking about products we can obtain from the soil by growing it ourselves, not just products that can be obtained from the soil. And it's also talking to depend as far as possible. You know, it might not be possible to get everything from the soil. Thank you. Titus.
I think that this quote here would also imply, you know, to depend on products that we can obtain from the soil, such as if we buy a country property, instead of just buying lumber from the lumber yard, we can learn how to log our own land. And, you know, you learn how to use a portable sawmill, you know, mill our own lumber, you know, instead of going out and buying a lot of cinder block or brick, you know, learn how to use the natural stone that may be in your creek. You know, I think that the statement here is more broad than just food. I think it implies also building material.
Absolutely. This statement implies a lot more than just food. And that's what I want to do next is outline what all we're talking about. So, let's start out with the survival priorities. What's number one? Number two? Number three? Number four? And number five? If you can't see the board, maybe some of you over here, I would encourage you just to move over. Can we do that? That's easier. I think turning, actually there's more people on this side than this side. So I'm tempted to move that over, but I think I'll mess with the camera people too much if I do that. We can do this. Does that help?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Based on this list, there is an expanded list of actual equipment item categories that we need. I'm calling it survival priority equipment, for lack of a better term. And what you see on your chart there's actually 3 types of shelter that we need to concern ourselves with. Okay? So let's do this. 1, 2, 3. What might those be? Okay, yeah, structural shelter or housing, roof and walls. I'm just going to call it structure. Structural shelter, what else? Pardon? Clothing, And what's the most important item of clothing? Clothing and footwear.
So the top line is clothing and footwear.
And notice I'm using the term footwear rather than shoes. Because if you didn't have any shoes, you would need to come up with something. And the thing that you came up with to put on your feet, you might want to call shoes, but it would be some type of footwear. Okay? One more type of shelter we need to concern ourselves with. Bedding, that's right. Something else to wrap up in at night when it gets colder. Okay, water. What do we need in order to have water available for us? Yeah, some kind of a container for it. I'm just going to say water bottle, but that includes your cup, okay? Might include my bucket over there. At home, it would include the piping and faucets, that bring water to you, okay? Water bottle. Okay, for health concerns, we talked about a bunch of items in the back there yesterday. Remember what we called them? Hygiene items, yes. A whole set of hygiene items that we need. Okay, across from fire. In order to have fire, what do we have to have? Okay, some sort of fuel to keep it burning, but we also need something to get the fire started with. Okay, so fire starter and fuel. Can I encourage you to sit up closer? We don't have a big group, so you don't need to stay way in the back, and it'd just be better if everybody's up there closer. So, fire starter, and fuel. Across from food, we have food itself, but frequently we need to prepare the food, we need to cook the food. And so I'm just going to call all of that food preparation equipment. I mean, there's just tons of it, right? I think the simplest food preparation equipment, though, would be just a cook pot and then some utensils. Probably a spoon would be the most simplest. I mean, when I go out camping, that's all I take is a cook pot and a spoon and my knife, and I'm good. So, cook pot and utensils. Now, beyond this list, I mean, these are the things that we need, but beyond this list, there is some things we need to add to this, and we call these tools. And I'm talking about tools here in an anthropological sense. I don't know if some of you are older, remember several years back, the scientists got all excited when they discovered monkeys taking a little stick and poking it down in the termite holes. And then the monkey would pull the stick out, eat the termites. And they realized that stick is a tool. Okay, the monkey can't really eat the stick. Well, I mean, he could, but it's not getting a lot from it, right? But he can use that stick to get something that he couldn't get otherwise. That's what we mean by a tool. Okay, for us, pretend this is a kitchen knife. I can't eat the knife, but I can use this knife to prepare food to make it more edible so that I can eat it. A tool, okay? And I've already given away our first category. We have 4 categories of tools. The first category is probably our most important tool, which is a knife. I was very pleased to see you pack it one yesterday. You just pulled it out and did what you needed to do. I mean, frequently you need to do that. I've talked with several groups, and then I tell them I'm always carrying a knife, and they're like, "Whatever for? Are you worried about you're going to get attacked or something?" And I'm like, that doesn't even enter my mind. I just use it so much. It's like, how do you get along without one? And so I would just, I understand. I've worked in the school system, and you can't do it at school, although I snuck in it anyway. But just get in the habit of carrying a knife, and you'll be find how much you use it, and then you'll have it when you do really need it. For sharp-edged cutting tools, there's actually 2 categories of sharp-edged cutting tools that we need to concern ourselves with, because you need something for fine carving and food preparation. I'll call that a knife. But you also need something for more serious wood shaping, which would be axes and saws and machetes and those kind of things, all right? So I'm calling it cutting and chopping tools. And just understand that there's both, we need both of those.
Off to the side on that one, we put sharpeners, even though there's no blank for it.
Yeah, and we'll include sharpeners in that too, because if your knife isn't sharp, it doesn't cut it.
And it's more dangerous.
Actually, yes, a sharp knife is a safer knife, because it's sharp, you're going to be more careful, but also when you go to cut with it, it goes where you want it, rather than you end up putting a whole lot of pressure and then it slips and who knows where it goes. Yes?
Even if you do slice yourself with a sharper knife, a sharp knife wound heals a whole lot quicker than a dull knife wound.
Yeah. Yes.
I use hand tools every day in
Yeah.
my life. And I have bought tools before thinking, oh, well, okay, it's only 20 bucks. I don't want to spend 50 bucks. I don't want to spend 70 bucks. I want to spend 20 bucks. Well, the 20 bucks was worthless to me. It would have been just as well for me to take the money and throw it in the fire. So make sure if you buy quality. Even if you might have to give more money, always buy quality. Always.
I just really want to emphasize what Titus just said here, buy quality.
It's always
And the
cheaper
best
in the long run.
illustration I can think of for that, it's always cheaper in the long run. The best illustration is there. Why didn't they, when they went to divide up Jesus' garments when he was hanging on the cross, okay, they were going to tear them in fourths and just pass it out, right? Use it for rags or whatever. But they saw that his garment was special, and they said they cast lots for it. Why?
It was quality.
It was quality. It was without seam. I don't know how they weave that, but anyway, Christ's garments didn't have any seams. He had bought something quality. He knew he was going into ministry. He knew he was going to be living very simply, and made sure that what he had was quality so that it would last. Okay? We need to approach life that way too. Now, having said that, going back to the knife, there is a whole brand of knives. They're called Mora, M-O-R-A, knives. And these knives are just good knives, and they're not expensive, okay? In other words, in order to get a good knife, I can spend like $16 and get a good Mora, and if I, get stuck with that in a survival situation until Jesus comes, I'm gonna consider myself blessed, because they're good knives, but you don't have to spend a lot. On the other hand, you can spend 50, 60 bucks easy and get a piece of junk.
Right.
So quality is more than just the price tag.
Right.
Okay, or discerning quality is more than just looking at the price tag. Yes?
Got a whole selection of Moors over there.
You have a whole selection of Moras.
Selection of Moors.
Awesome. Awesome. So if anybody needs to get hooked up with knives, see Brother Brooks. Good. Okay, second type of cutting of tools we need. Digging tools. What was I packing around yesterday on the high? Digging tools, some kind of tool that you can dig with. Third type of tool. Cordage. This might be a term that most of us don't use too much. Primitive skills, they use it a lot. That's kind of where I picked it up. Cord is the root word. And this means everything from thread to rope. And some of you have kind of heard that kind of half joke going around that the universe is held together with duct tape. Well, in a primitive situation, it's literally tied together with twine. The reason modern man uses duct tape is because he doesn't know how to tie knots. You just stick it there. You need to learn some knots. All right? I saw a hand, yes?
A lot of people like paracord because it's very strong and very versatile. They're actually survival bracelets and anklets.
Yes.
That might have a whistle on them.
Paracord's a mixed blessing. Okay? It's good stuff. Don't misunderstand me, but it's a mixed blessing. It's synthetic. Okay? It doesn't biodegrade. I've been way out in the back, and here's these pieces of cord that somebody tied something up with and just cut it and left it, and it's ugly trash. Okay, so if you're packing paracord, untie it, take it with you. But some type of cordage. Okay? Also, fasteners would fit into this category because that's really what you're doing with cordage is you're tying stuff together. You know, you go in a hardware store and there's all sorts of fasteners, you know, screws and nails and all that kind of bolts, all that kind of stuff. They're all fasteners. And so that would actually fit into this same category here as cordage. Yes?
Dental floss.
Dental floss, cordage again, okay? And the last group of tools here is containers. Just think of all the containers we have in our lives. You know, everything from baskets to bags, jars, cans, buckets, boxes, dresser drawers, on and on and on. Okay, containers to keep our stuff in, to carry it in. You have a bunch of little items, it's much easier to stick it in a container and carry that, right? And try to carry all these little items. So these are the things that we need for life. And this is the list that we need no matter who we are, where we are. Okay, people clear on the other side of the world, some other culture, they probably have very different items that they're using, but they still fill those same categories. Okay, if you're out in the wilderness, you need these same items. At home, you have these same items, right? You've got all this stuff at home. Now, somebody might be thinking, well, I don't have any fire at home. But when you turn the thermostat on, fire goes on somewhere. When you turn the stove on, fire goes on somewhere, right? Even if it's electric. You might say, well, I don't have any digging tools in my house. But somebody used some kind of excavation equipment to level out the pad for your house and dig the trenching for the wiring and the pipes and so on. So, and we have all of these things connected with our homes. And this is what we need for life. So if we're talking about not being able to buy or sell, needing to raise our own provisions, rely on products we can obtain from the soil, this is the list we got to start with. Okay? And I want you to start thinking a certain way. I'm not sure we're going to run it down for every single one of these. Maybe we will. Let's just start with clothing. In order to have clothing, what do we have to have? Material. But where do you get the material?
You have to buy it, unless you are going to spin your own wool and weave.
We're talking about doing it ourselves. Okay? And just the process there. I mean, I'm saying you just take each one of these and trace it back in your head to a product that you can obtain from the soil. Okay? So like somebody mentioned, if you're going to have material, you need to weave it. And what are you weaving it with? Some threads. And where the threads come from, you had to spin it, and then you had to get that from either a sheep or a cotton plant or something like that. That's something you can get from the soil. Okay, do you see that train? And so if we want clothing during this time of no buy, no sell, if we don't already have it, and I think there can be a good case made for if we buy quality, it will last us through that time. Okay, remember the children of Israelites when they were wandering through the desert, their shoes didn't wear out. Okay, God might do something like that for us too. But what I'm thinking of, let's say there's this family that shows up that hasn't had time to do any preparation and they need to be outfitted. They're going to need all this stuff too. We might need to maybe not so much make clothing for them as they'll probably have something that they're wearing, but they might need some bedding. Okay, something to wrap up in at night. And so I'm a little more just looking at the whole picture, thinking we might need to be able to make some kind of a blanket more than making clothing, but it's still material. It's the same thing. Pardon? What about animal hides? Okay, so that's another option. But there's a whole thing there too. So you have to get the animal hide, then you have to know how to tan it, and then you have to know how to create something from it. So, we've talked about clothing and footwear. Actually fits in since we started talking about animal hides already. On our list here, the final column is skills. What are the skills that we're going to need in order to do that?
Say the question again.
What are the skills? Well, let's go with the animal hides first, because that's where we were last. What are the skills that we're going to need in order to create some clothing or footwear from an animal hide? Okay, yeah, so tanning and then leatherworking. I'm going to group that all together and just say leatherworking. You got to know how to skin it too, okay? But I mean, I'm just grouping. And yeah.
First of all, you need to know how to catch it.
Yeah.
But before that, you need to know how to sharpen your knife, so your knife is sharpened up.
Oh, you guys are running with this. Awesome. Okay, no, that's the types of thought we need to start thinking, okay?
So if you,
Yeah.
if you don't know how to sharpen your knife, then you need to take it at step one. Know how to sharpen your knife, and then go to the next.
Well, we'll get to that when we get down here to knives, okay? Let's go with material, some clothing or bedding for material. What kind of skills are we going to need in order to get that? It's going to have to start with what? I'm really sorry, because of the thing I can't really hear you. Oh, before you shear the sheep, what kind of skills are you going to need?
Animal husbandry.
Animal husbandry. Or if you're raising cotton, you're going to some kind of agricultural skills. Okay, so I'm going to start with agricultural skills. And then from there, we're going to go to a whole set of skills we call fiber arts. Okay, which includes spinning and weaving, knitting, crocheting, all of that kind of stuff. To turn those fibers into fabric. And so the skills we would need for this, we'll start with agricultural skills, and then leatherworking, and fiber arts. Okay, for bedding, actually the same thing, right? How about structural shelter? To build some kind of structural shelter. What kind of skills are we going to need to know there? Okay, carpentry. What else might we need to know? Because you can't just start building something of wood. I mean, you can, but it's not going to last. Some kind of masonry skills to make a foundation. Okay, and I'm going to group all of these, and then some roofing skills too, is make sometimes a whole nother ball game too. I'm going to group all of those together and just call them construction skills. Okay? And, as Titus alluded to a little bit ago, I want to encourage you to start thinking of housing structure that you can make just from what's on the land. Okay, the native peoples did that, the pioneers did that. If we can't buy or sell, we'll probably be back doing that same similar stuff. So like study what the natives and what the pioneers did in your area for ideas. Okay? And just thinking like, okay, again, maybe you have your home set up on the country, but here this other family shows up and you don't really have any room in your home. You need to make them something. What could you make with what's on the land? In order to have some kind of a container or containers for water, what kind of skills are we going to need?
Pottery.
Pottery is one option. What's another option? What? Okay, agricultural skills, growing some gourds. Okay, what else?
In this area, one of the best water storage ways is find a hollow log, split it, and nail boards to the ends, and you can have wonderful water crops. I mean, that's, in this area, that's...
Okay. I'm just going to put some down. I'm sure there's more options than what we've listed here, but you're getting the idea. That's the important thing. So let's say pottery. Pottery, agricultural skills, woodworking. Okay, hygiene items. What do we need in order to provide ourselves with hygiene items? Let's focus right now on the country living phase rather than wilderness survival phase. And so rather than going out and gathering so much, which I'm sure we're going to do a fair share of, even during that time, I'm just going to call it agricultural skills, even though we might be just harvesting off some plants, right? Agricultural skills and woodworking, and so on. Fire. In order to have fire, what kind of skills are we going to need? Okay, woodworking. For a fire starter. What? What she said? Yeah, well, let's say we need to make some kind of fire starter. Flint and steel is my method of choice. It's the one method I know of that will last indefinitely. We're talking about metalworking there. So metalworking and woodworking. Food. What do we need in order to make food? Agricultural skills, yes. And maybe some gathering skills too, if we're going to be tapping into the wild plants a bit. Yes?
You know, you were talking about studying the Native Americans or studying the people that once inhabited.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting to note that those tribes who relied heavily on agriculture were typically peaceful tribes.
Yes.
And ones who were more carnivorous were much more at war.
Yes. Interesting stuff.
Construction skills for greenhouses.
Yeah, animal husbandry would be included in agriculture. Or at least I'm including it there just for the sake of not having enough space on the line. Okay, let's go down to cook pot and utensils. What kind of skills do we need in order to make cook pots and utensils?
Pottery.
Pottery again. Pottery, woodworking, and I'm going to include metal. A lot of our utensils are made out of metal. Okay, cutting and chopping tools. Okay, we're talking pretty much metalworking there and woodworking for handles. Digging tool, kind of the same thing. Cordage. We're talking about fiber arts there, right? And containers. What do we need to do in order to make containers? Okay, basketry is one possibility. What's another one? Woodworking. What else? Pottery again. Yeah. Okay, I mean, there's like all sorts of different containers, right? And so this list can get really long. I'll list the ones we had just for the sake of time here. Baskets. Basketry. wood, working, pottery, fiber arts, if you're making bags, okay. I'll go ahead and throw that one on there too, I think.
Metalworking, the buckets and stuff.
And metal, okay. All right, you get the picture here. I hope more than anything else just to influence your thinking and not just go to the store because I need this. Well, where did that come from? How could I get that if I wasn't able to buy it from the store? Okay? The other thing I really want you to grab and run with here is look at these skills. Look at the same ones that keep popping up over and over again, like agriculture and metalworking and woodworking and fiber arts and so on. And invest in learning some of these skills. Okay, the more of these skills you have, the more valuable you are going to be. The more you are going to be able to benefit and bless others, as we talked about. I'm going to say that again. The more of these skills you have, or the better you are at any given skill, the better you will be able to benefit and bless others. Again, you might be all set up with what you need. If you buy quality stuff, that might last you through the whole time. But maybe here's this family that shows up that jumped through the door at the last minute, and they need to be outfitted totally. They need all this stuff. You may or may not be able to share what you have with them. Some things you will be able to, like your land. But there's other things that everybody needs their own. Okay? So like pick one of these skills, whichever talents and abilities and inclinations God has given you, learn it, develop it. And once you get that one mastered, pick another one. Okay, because we're not going to be able to buy or sell. We're going to have to produce everything that we need from the soil. Yes?
Natural treatments. We need really to be into natural treatments to help somebody and even ourselves.
Yes.
Where does that fall under in health?
Pardon?
Where is that going to fall under number 3, health and
Natural treatments.
concerns for the health treatment? That's where it's going to fall.
Yeah, that's a whole another category, which fits into health, yes. Natural treatments. And I think the reason I'm not emphasizing medical missionary work so much is because there's a lot of other people out there already doing it. And I think most of you have been exposed to that stuff already, and so I don't feel the need so much. It's this other stuff that possibly most of you haven't even thought about that I feel compelled to share.
There's different places in the scripture that speaks of laboring with our hands.
Yes.
And, to minister good.
Yes.
And in the Spirit of Prophecy, over and over, she talks about not just book learning, but also, practical skills.
Right.
Because in education, if you've got book learning on the one side and practical, working skills on the other, if you're going to neglect one, let it be the book learning.
Yeah.
And the reason for that being, if you use your hands to make something useful, it also develops the mind. And so that's why we have this counsel from God,
Right.
to be having a practical education.
Right.
Society doesn't really value.
Yeah, society, it's just the opposite.
They switch it around.
Yeah. Further analysis, I'm not going to go through all the processes with you because I think I've accomplished what I really want to accomplish with you here, so I'm just going to throw this out. We can get all of these things from the soil, okay? If we have these skills and we have the tools in order to do it. Because in order to do many of these skills, you have to have some tools. Just a minute. The one thing in going over this list and looking at the whole picture that we possibly could not obtain from the soil would be salt. Unless you happen to live by a salt deposit or the coast. So I'm just throwing that out for your information. Yes?
What about metalwork?
Pardon?
What about metal?
I would say 100 years ago that would be an issue, but nowadays it's not as much. There is just a lot of junk metal sitting around, okay? And if you have some metalworking skills, you can turn that junk metal into useful objects. I mean, I do it all the time. I have a little blacksmith shop at home, and I rarely, I haven't for so long, I don't remember the last time I bought metal. Okay, I just scrounge stuff and make things out of it, what I need.
Do you have a forge?
I have a forge, yes.
Charcoal, burn?
Hmm?
Is it charcoal?
I can go either way. I can either use charcoal or coal. I prefer coal because it's a little hotter and quicker, but I've worked with charcoal a lot too over the years. So just, whatever I have, I'll use it. Okay, one other thing that's going to be hard to get is oil. I don't know if there's anything on the paper about this or not. No, I'm not really finding it. Don't worry about it. What do we use oil for?
Lubrication.
Okay, yeah, lubrication. What else? Cooking. Okay, potentially fuel, although I'm not going to want, if oil's hard to get, am I going to burn oil just to stay warm? No, I'll use wood because that's much easier to get. On the other hand, for lighting, an oil lamp might be the best answer. So oil for cooking, for lighting, possibly for lubrication, and one other thing.
Wounds.
Wounds? Yeah, medical purposes, but that's only if you need it, right? I'm talking about something that we need regularly anyway. What?
Transportation.
Well, that would fit into the lubrication category, I would think. Oh, you're talking about fueling your car. Yeah, I don't know. We'll go there in a minute, maybe. Has anybody made soap?
Oh, yeah.
In order to make soap, you need oil. And so I'm going to throw out those three main categories. There's the machinery aspect also, but for cooking, that's probably the most important one. Soap would be and lighting. Okay, you need oil. And I'm talking primarily vegetable oil here. Yes? Yes, there are other soap plants if you have them in your area.
In this particular area, if you get an oil press, or typically you can get small hand functional oil presses. Walnuts and hickory nuts are a great source of good oils that you can press yourself.
And thinking about this and researching it, oil or plants that produce oil are easy to grow. There's nut meats there, oilseed sunflower I'm thinking of particular, and then the other oil plants they make oils from. But sunflowers grow easy, and if you get the oilseed sunflower, you got a lot of oil there. The trick is getting the oil out of the seed. Okay? And unfortunately, in this country, at least as far as I know, maybe y'all have resources here that I don't have out west, but there's this little hand crank press for making like essential oils, but like if you're trying to make enough oil to cook with, you're gonna have to sit there cranking a long time. It's not set up for the type of scale that we need to do it. Now, in other countries where they have a lot more cottage industry, they have the machinery available to do that. Okay, I understand Jerry Franklin, some of you know him. He picked up a press in Kenya that he uses up at his place, and it seems to work real good. It's more a unit like this kind of size, and you can crank it, and it cranks out oil. I've seen pictures. And I would love to get a hold of one of those. Okay, but getting something from Kenya is kind of prohibitive almost. I don't have the connections. And so to come up with, that, to me, this is a real challenge, is how to get the oil from the plants. I think olive oil is much easier to process if you have olive trees, but how long does it take to grow an olive tree so that you get a decent crop in order to get the oil? That might not work out simply because of the time involved there. So anyway, I'm just throwing these ideas out. If somebody knows some really good oil press that's on the market, please let me know. And I think more of the rest of us should be getting them so that we're able to produce oil during this time. You had your hand up here a long time ago, I'm sorry.
Oh, he asked the same question.
He asked the same question, so I got taken care of. Okay. All right, so be thinking about salt and oil.